A very good day to all of you. In this video, we are going to look at the guidelines for teaching the functional grammar lesson. Ready? Let's move on.
Now, every functional grammar lesson will have, most of them at least, will have a specific set or specific way in which the lesson is taken forward. This is based on our understanding, our research, and also how based on the pilot that we did in the class. Now, each functional grammar lesson will start with a recall of the grammar concept in the previous lesson. This may be a short exercise, or sometimes it could just be an informal interaction, or it could be a game. Now remember, you're recalling the grammar concept in the previous lesson, which would have been in the last cycle. So there would have been 4 weeks which would have passed after the last lesson. So you may have to spend a good amount of time on the recall part of it. Next will be the introduction to the concept. So whatever is a grammar concept as a sentence structure, prepositions, nouns, we are going to introduce them to the concept as a concept and explain to them a little bit about how it is used and why it is used. This will be very elementary. We will not be going too much in depth into any of the concepts in this module. It is again functional grammar. This will be followed by a Blackboard exercise where you will actually be writing something on the Blackboard. The children will be writing something on the Blackboard and you will be repeating it multiple times so that it sort of settles in. This will be a very interactive exercise. The Blackboard exercise, and you will actually be writing, you will be putting blanks, you'll be putting, so pretty much it is even before they put one word down in their book, they would have witnessed it several times. Now, following the Blackboard exercise will be an exercise where they are going to just identify the usage of the grammar concept. When we say identify, they will just see and then they will be able to say, okay, this is a noun. Okay, now I see that there is a full stop being used at the end of the sentence, and so on. This will be the first exercise, followed by practice exercises. Practice exercises, there could be 1, there could be 2, and rare cases there could be 3. So this will be basically trying to use the grammar concept in several different ways. Now, the last part of this session would be, after the practice exercises, will be to identify the correct and incorrect usage. So this could again be through pictures, this could be through sentences, and so forth. And of course, I said last, but the last part actually would be the homework. So there is a homework which is indicated in every lesson. You will be asking the children to do the homework and bring it back the next class. And do make sure that you look at the homework and interact with them on that so that they also take it seriously. Well, that would be what is there in a functional grammar lesson. And now to move on, let us go a little bit in depth into each of these concepts. First, always the recall. Now, as I was telling you, the recall is very important because it has been some time since the last lesson. It has been like 5 weeks since the last lesson. So the chance that children will remember everything is quite less. But to tide that over, to sort of help the children to, sort of come to this point, we do have some revision exercises in the lessons which come in between. But that said, make sure you do a good recall of the previous exercise, and if you need to do something above and beyond what is given in the workbook, what is given in the exercises, please go ahead and do it. If it is required, you can even redo some of the exercises of the previous lesson. To start with, the first thing we're going to do is introduction to the concept, right? Now, let's see how the introduction to the concept is done in the first functional grammar lesson and the second functional grammar lesson, just to give you an idea. So in each of the lessons, the introduction may be in a slightly different way. And that said, please always remember that if you think you need to go further in depth, or if you need to spend more time or less time, depending on the children or the class you have, it's yours to take a call. But make sure that at the end of the introduction, the concept is clearly fitted into their head that this is something that will help them speak in a more structured way. First, the first grammar lesson is in fact sentence structure. And in this grammar lesson, we are just going to, the introduction is through, we are going to talk to them through what are the key concepts of the sentence structure. So you're going to tell them that there should be one finger space between each word and the position of the full stop and the capital. You would probably be using several examples to illustrate this introduction. Now let us look at how the introduction is done in the second lesson, which is the naming words or the nouns. So here the introduction is through a picture. Now the picture is given to them in the workbook, and you're going to be asking them to identify all the things they see in the picture. Now that is something they will definitely be able to do, and to translate them into English if they are not able to find the English words. After they do that, you can then go on to tell them that all the words that they have identified are in fact naming words. So that becomes the introduction to the concept.
After the introduction, you will move on to the See and Learn Blackboard exercise. So basically, these are exercises which you will be writing, where you will be doing the writing on the board. The entire class will participate. Let's now look at an example of how this could be. So this, what you see here is a Blackboard exercise for the first functional grammar lesson, sentence structure. So in this exercise, you'll be writing the sentences on the board without using the correct sentence structure. Then you ask them to read it. And they will, by doing that, they will be able to understand that the sentence doesn't make sense without a sentence structure. So even if they do not know each of the words, they will still understand that something is wrong. They are not able to make sense of the entire word. So like this, you will be using non-examples, so to say, that is the sentence which are wrong, to help them to understand that we use a sentence structure for clarity. So in the introduction and this exercise, the Blackboard exercise, the focus is on the children understanding the reason for the usage of this particular grammar topic. Now let's look at the Blackboard exercise for the second grammar lesson, that is naming words. So in this, what has been given here is that you narrate or you tell a part of the story which is the previous lesson. So you just read out or narrate a passage from that story and then go on to write it on the board, and then ask them to identify the places, people, animals and things from the passage. Call the children to the board and ask them to write them down in 4 columns. So draw 4 columns on the board and ask them to write it down. And as they identify, if they are not able to write it, you can write it for them. And once they identify it, you have a further discussion on this, and then help them to understand that the naming words are the words which are used to indicate these things. People's names, places, animals, things, and names of places, and so on. The third stage is identifying the usage of the grammar concept. Let's see how this is done. And again, the same 2 exercises. One is sentence structure and the other is naming words. The sentence structure, what we are asking them to do is, there's an exercise which is given in the workbook. So we are going to ask them to underline the capital letters and full stops in the story. Now the assumption here is that they know the capital letters and full stop, but they are not aware that capital letters are used in the beginning of each sentence. Now as they underline and or after they finish underlining, discuss this with them and point out that the capital letter is used in the beginning of each sentence. Naming words. For naming words, the exercise is, we have 2 exercises in identifying the naming words. In this exercise, you're going to ask the children to identify the words Earlier, you remember we had talked about what defines a naming word. So in this exercise, they are going to identify and underline the naming words in the set of sentences that is given to them. Of course, practice makes perfect, isn't it? So we do have 2 to 3 exercises again, depending on the length of exercise and the complexity of the topic, where they practice what they have learned. This could be like rewrite the sentences correctly using capitals and full stops. It could be like again identifying and categorizing the naming words. It could be rearranging the sentence. And we have tried to have a variety of exercises in this so that it doesn't get boring. But the structure is constant. So there is some amount of predictability for the children. The last set of exercises they will be doing in the class is to identify the correct and incorrect usage of the grammar concept. For example, in sentence structure, we are just going to ask them to put a tick against the sentences which are correct and a cross against the sentences which are incorrect. Now, in the naming words, we have a slightly different exercise where we have indicated graphically a basket with a set of words. The children have to identify the words which are naming words and the words which are not. Now remember, at this point, they may be able to identify the naming words because they have done enough practice on them, but they may not be able to identify the words which are not naming words. For example, adjectives such as good. So it may not be possible for them to identify. So they will need some guidance with you. Get guidance from you rather. Do remember that the class exercises are not assessment exercises. They are supposed to be guided exercises. You will be helping them along. Just like every other lesson, the grammar lessons do have a short homework section. Read out the homework and ask them to do the homework in their books. And that sort of brings us to the end of the lesson plan. But now that you've executed the lesson plan, you may have a question in your mind. I'm not really a mind reader, but I'm sure you're thinking this. How do I know that this has worked? So we just have a set of guidelines for you to assess if it has worked. Let's look at that next. Were the students able to understand the concept taught? Were the students able to identify the concept in print? Were they able to apply the concept to do the practice exercises and differentiate between correct and the wrong concept? Now, if most of the children in your class were able to achieve this, that means that that concept is clear. If few children in the class were able to achieve it, they may either need a repetition or maybe a little different approach. If none of the children in the class were able to achieve it, well, you know that the level is too high for them and we may need to do some kind of foundation or prepping up exercise. That does bring us to the end of this particular video on how to teach the functional grammar lessons or how to execute the functional grammar lesson plans in module 2, and we will definitely come back to you with more on the other lessons. Thank you.